uploaded and available to view on the council's website. Could I ask IT colleagues to start the recording? Okay, Christine, over to you for the sediment. Apologies.
Thanks, Chair, and morning members. Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor John McFadden. Nope. Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Present, Christine, thanks.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Barry Douglas. Councillor Douglas. I see you're online, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Neil Ingram.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Claire Maitland. Here. Councillor Drew Filson.
Yeah.
Dr David Lewis.
Yes, here.
Claire McKellar.
Here.
I have an apology from Babs Mowat. Norman Watt. Nope. Jackie Livingston.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. I know there's quite a few cough and sneeze bugs going about. Just keep them online. That's where we like them. Okay. Item 1's declaration of interest. I don't think there's anything stands out unless anybody else is. No, nothing. Declare. Okay. On straight away to the first, the two education items, and that's policy review schedule and Amanda Law.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. The purpose of this report is to recommend to Cabinet proposed changes to employment policies which are detailed in paragraph 2 of the report. The background is set out in paragraphs 3 through to 5, which is the standard background for the policy review schedule. The main report is detailing 2 policies that have been reviewed. In paragraph 7, the travel and subsistence. As part of this review, we've brought together several policies to have them all in the one place for employees. This includes car mileage, business mileage for bicycle users, cycle to work and excess travel. The main points updated are within section 4, the inclusion of the requirement for business users insurance, which is set out in the Health and Safety Road Risk Standard. Section 5, the inclusion of new electronic travel and subsistence claim form, which is currently being implemented. Section 6, confirmation that the Council will pay the same mileage rate to electric vehicle owners as they do to petrol and diesel vehicles. However, if they are part of the salary sacrifice car leasing scheme, an element of this will be taxed. Section 14 gives clarification that employees who incur driving or parking fines while in council business, that they will be responsible for settling these fines. In section 17 in Appendix 1, the subsistence rates have been updated to include the current HMRC approved rates. The excess travel section was approved at Cabinet in June 23 and there's no proposed changes. The other policy detailed in paragraph 8 is the whistleblowing policy. This was last approved at Cabinet in February 2019 and it's a full review has been undertaken. However, most of the changes are administrative changes to designations, services, the management structure and terminology has been updated throughout the policy. We've included the face, qualities and behaviours and we're updated equality statement. And appendices have been added to include a flowchart and updated template letters. Implications are tabled in paragraph 12. There's no implications other than the people culture, which we've already noted, and the governance, where the proposed changes will ensure that the Council continues to meet its legislative requirements as an employer and its pursuit of continuous improvement and best value. Note in paragraph 16, the trade unions have been fully consulted and agreed with the changes of the policy. And paragraph 17 details that an EQIA has been carried out for both and is available on the members portal. The recommendations are in paragraph 2 and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Amanda, just in terms of the electrical vehicle, there was some kind of discussion, I think, with trade unions. Just can you clarify what the position is? Because although it might currently be getting it free of charge, it's not just all about the fuel. It's, I think, that's depreciation and everything else.
GMB and Unite, the union, had no issues, but Unison had raised some issues about individuals that had electric cars just now that were not getting paid the mileage rate because they were getting free charging. But the mileage rate is made up of wear and tear of cars as well as actual fuel. So we have implemented it that whether they're getting the free fuel, the free charging at this point or not, and they're undertaking mileage in business, that they'll be able to claim the business mileage.
Thanks, Amanda. Anyone else, any questions? No, in that case, can we go to recommendations? Can we agree recommendations? Okay, and next we've got the item 3, and apologies for the late circulation of this. But we've got the consultation, the education bill, and Linda.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, members, and thank you for the acceptance of this paper. You'll note it's aligned to the consultation actually closing on the 18th of November. So, members, in terms of the purpose of the report is to provide Cabinet with a proposed East Ayrshire Council position in respect of the education bill provisions proposal that was published on the 7th of November 2023. In respect of recommendations, it's recommended that Cabinet agrees to the call for views exercise as being currently ongoing, to recommend to approve the content of the response from East Ayrshire Council as part of the consultation, and to note the content of the previous report that I brought to Council in regards to education reform, which is clearly linked to this particular report, members. Members, in respect of background, we go back to the Genesis report, which was that of Professor Ken Muir, putting learners at the centre, towards a future vision for Scottish education that was published in March 22, which made 21 key recommendations, several of which are now recommended in the education bill provisions. The recommendations fell under 4 key headings. You'll see them there, members. A renewed vision for Scottish education. That was clearly reflected in the previous paper brought to Council. Renewed qualifications and assessment body to replace the SQA as currently stands. A national agency for Scottish education. That per se, members, is a new Education Scotland. And inspection was covered, and that, members, was to move away from Education Scotland being responsible both for issuing advice, but then also inspecting said advice. So per se, issuing advice and then potentially marking their own work. So to put that in layman's terms. Members, paragraphs 4 through 7, apologies, cover each of those in slightly further detail, the narrative of which I've probably just given you verbatim. Paragraphs 8 through 10 cover the consultation and how that stands in East Ayrshire at the moment. You'll be aware I issue a full education update every Friday to all education staff across the council. This has been with them since that time. So since the genesis of the consultation in November, this has been out with all schools and indeed with all staff right across the council. Our Parent Council Steering Group also have taken part in this exercise through our links with the National Parent Forum for Scotland, and our young people have taken part through their already huge involvement in both the Hayward Review and indeed the national discussion where these processes and procedures were taken forward as well. At this stage, given that we are at consultation stage, members, there are no implications arising from this report, and the appendix from page 11 in your papers, members, provides the response that is proposed from an East Ayrshire Council position. Questions 1 through 6, because the narrative's not included in that piece, questions 1 through 6 pertain to the new Qualifications Scotland Agency, and questions 7 through 12, members, pertain to the Education Scotland stroke HMIE inspectorate issue. So, members, can I hand over for any questions at this stage and any further commentary? Thank you, Leader.
Thanks very much, Linda. Any questions or observations, Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to extend my thanks to Linda, not only for the work that she's done at the previous council meeting for pulling all the landscape changes in the education space for us, but also last night taking through the Parent Council Chair Forum. And again, that was just another update last night, but there'd been previous sessions that Linda hosted with that group in this chamber with other representatives from Education Scotland. So helping us with that groundwork to get to this position. It's been an excellent piece of work, and I'm sure Linda will keep us appraised as the bill progresses.
Thanks very much, Elaine.
Yes,
Anyone else?
Yes, please.
Morning, yeah.
Thank you very much. Linda, I'm just not understanding why we have this lateness of the paper here. This is obviously something that you're looking for our approval. You heard me speak. You know that I have copies of all of the reports from the previous council that you brought forward to us. I welcomed that at council. You know that this is a particular interest of mine. I'm just struggling to understand why we have got this at this stage when clearly it is a consultation response and we clearly knew when the closing date would be. Also, I have to pick up in terms of the recommendation, the wording of it itself at recommendation 2 is not completely clear. Is it recommend to council to approve the contents of the response? And
Thanks.
what is it that we're actually being asked to agree here within this? And then I do have to say, just in terms of some of the wording, I don't actually understand how the Scottish Government, frankly, in my view, can call itself anything it likes. It is a Scottish executive, so how an executive can then refer back to another executive, which is what is in the response, I have to say I am struggling a bit to actually understand the phraseology used there.
Thanks, Maureen. I'll maybe bring Eddie in just in terms of the latest of the paper, etc.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay, you're absolutely right. It's very unusual for us to have this process, and again, apologies for how late the paper was issued. It was, a consideration about whether the paper should go directly to council, but in considering that, we had to recognise that obviously this cabinet also sits as an education committee with the extended non-elected members that are present here. So to give the non-elected members the opportunity to also have a consideration of the paper, it would have to come to cabinet first before it went on to council. And as always, you would expect me to be frank. It was when we were sitting doing pre-agenda of council, we were clear that our only two options there would then be either that council would almost have to sit with the 32 plus the non-elected members in terms of a wider council, or we would need to have due consideration at cabinet, and as always we would then make a recommendation on, as we had previously agreed, that any consultation response that was going from East Ayrshire Council, it would actually be council that would agree that, rather than cabinet that would agree a consultation response. So it was a bit about process and, again, understanding when it certainly becomes education consultations, as well as our elected members, our non-elected members also get that opportunity to do that. You're absolutely right in terms of the time, and it's something that we could have considered at an earlier stage and brought the process, different for that. So again, apologies for that in terms of the process around it, but hopefully that explains why. In terms of some of the content, that I would ask that if Linda speaks a bit about the content in terms of what you're talking in terms of the response rather than the process.
Linda?
Yeah, thanks, Chief Executive. So in regards to the actual content of the response itself, members, and I hope that explains the lateness around about this and that it was destined for council. So in regards to the questions in respect of the qualifications body members, you'll see in there in question 1, looking at learning experiences of young people, avoiding the 2-term dash approach for young people taking hires, which is quite traumatic for those young people in that space. but also building up a portfolio of achievements. Now that takes us back into the Hayward Review, but the question does ask what changes should we consider. So actually it's a bit of a cross-border one in terms of the Hayward Review and also Ken Muir's recommendations. Clearly in terms of the offer, that must be industry-led, and again for us in this council that would be aligning ourselves clearly with the outputs and intended outputs from the Ayrshire Growth Deal in question 1. In question 2, ensuring the views of teaching professionals are taken into account. The response there does say that the qualifications body has to be much more front-facing and consultative. That's one of the criticisms that have been levelled towards the SQA in that space, is it's very much been making of decisions that have then, if you take the COVID certifications, an algorithmic approach to examinations, which clearly was a majorly contested issue at the time. So clearly it has to be much more front-facing in terms of how it engages both the teaching profession and indeed members in question 3, how it also engages with pupils, students, other learners and more users in terms of that particular body. So 2 and 3 are about how the new qualifications service, if you like, might actually consult more widely and be somewhat more front-facing and indeed accountable for the decisions that it makes in that particular space. Question 4 pertains to qualifications members in respect of the reliability, the standard and fit for purpose in terms of qualifications. The commentary there, members, is about equity for all, that we must move away clearly from a standard whereby it's the 5 hires or bust type approach. This has to be about celebrating learners at all levels, and that also includes lifelong learning members. In my previous paper on education reform that went to council, the mandate from Hayward is to create a national diploma of achievement that actually every one of us sitting in this room would then hold, and some of us might even remember having the red folder back in our own school days. The national record of achievement, this would clearly be a digital record. So this is something that young people moving into further education, higher education, the world of work or training can begin to gather and represent all of their achievements as they move through, rather than those of a particularly, exam-based or potentially more academic type nature. So in the narrative there in question number 4, we've recommended highly that we anchor ourselves to the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework. Qualifications are all levelled. People are really beginning to understand those in terms of, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to Masters and PhD, 11, 12 and 13. So it's a common language of qualifications, which means people understand the level that it's at rather than what the qualification is actually called. So you can have a foundation apprenticeship at level 6, hires also level 6. So it's about beginning to really flatten that landscape out and make sure that all of our learners have the chance to represent their achievements and skills and talents fairly, members. So that's covered in question number 4. In question 5, how do we think the qualifications body can best work with others? I have highlighted there is a misprint in the survey. I'll leave that one be. But the new body must be willing to accept the new voices and organisations that are in the space. It can't be a moving round of the chairs around about the same table. So it has to be willing to hear from new voices, from employers, from the whole DYW type agenda, from communities, from our third sector. A great example is why we're not mainstreaming potentially volunteering and having all young people, and again linked to potentially yesterday's conference members around about our perception of young people. Why don't we mainstream volunteering in education? A lot of people think it's something that should just sit in DV, which only attracts a certain number of young people. So again, we've got that opportunity to hear from different sectors, and clearly what we promote here is something of that. We have asked or promoted that something around about community planning, approaching that type of stratified approach, but blurred lines approach that seeks to generate outcomes in a performance type framework might be a good way for the new qualifications agency to organise itself. Members, in question 6, there were purposes set out around about inspection. The purposes there were fairly sound. These are reflected in the answers, questions 7 through to 12. The range of establishments inspected by HMIE at this point in time would cover clearly all of our schools. The Care Inspectorate inspect ECCs. There's a joint inspection model now takes place so that, for example, ECCs don't get visited, or primary schools don't get visited by Education Scotland and then the Care Inspectorate to look at at their ECC provision. It's a joint inspection model. It's much more slick, and clearly it's a lot less stressful for the heads of centre and the head teachers involved. It's not 2 visits, it's 1. Clearly CLD, so community learning and development, is also covered in there. So again, we have mandated that again could remain within the functions, and clearly we have a collaborative model that East Ayrshire took part in March this year, a collaborative inspection model whereby other authorities come and look at what other authorities are doing. So clearly that collaborative model, that's going to come through shortly, we believe, in an output from the OECD that's mandating that that's really a good way for our local authorities to evaluate their own performance, which is against each other, and take advice from others in that space. In question 8, around about the role of the inspectorate in the education of publicly funded colleges and initial teacher education, we do have some concerns that there's a lack of consistency in initial teacher education from establishment to establishment, and that really there needs to be much more consistency around about that, with heavier involvement from the inspectorate to make sure that what our new entrants to the profession are receiving is absolutely fit for purpose and sets them up for their probationship and first roles. Members, in question 9, the priorities clearly were around about whether we should be splitting Education Scotland into 2 groups, aka the advice and support offering arm and the inspection offering arm, if offering is that the right word to use where inspection is concerned. But we've said there that the proposals are sound, and it does seem rather perverse that a body can issue advice and then inspect its own work in that particular way, and also that this inspectorate should be absolutely freed from any politicisation. It has to be an independent inspectorate in that full sense. In question 11, around about governance, the arrangements currently in place that govern inspections that pertain to education are actually very strong. There's significant involvement of the full school community in advance of the inspection, and there's also opportunities for the full school community during that inspection, and that covers third sector partners, community, members, staff from other areas that support the school. So for us, potentially something like, CLD or the partnership. So that particular piece, members, is actually something that's already very strong, and we would hope that that would continue because everyone gets the chance to have their say, either through the surveys or via the focus groups that are arranged in the schools. In question 12, members were asked the question about whether or not we think evidence from inspections is being used as fully as possible. The simple answer to that in my response is that no. It's very much a go search type approach at the minute nationally. You have to sit and read inspection reports as they're published. There's no almost like a knowledge or intelligence hub that really should be pivotal in driving forward improvement. So there's nothing set up on a national basis. There was a publication called Scotland Learns that wasn't used for the vehicle for that. Somewhat unfortunately, it could have been a great vehicle for that, but it wasn't. It's now been withdrawn. But what we've said there is there needs to be much more communication around about inspection, and clearly where there's matters for celebration. You'll be aware here in East Ayrshire, we had the first establishment in Scotland to get the 4 excellence in the form of Riccarton, and we were then subject to a significant lengthy time of, I'd like to call it educational tourism, because people read the reports and then want to come and see what you're doing. So ultimately, it's very much around about who's read what, and it's very much by osmosis rather than by purpose. So members, hopefully that covers the response to the questions there. And again, I'm happy to take any further questions or comments in that particular space. Thanks, Leader.
Thanks, Linda. Maureen, did you want back in? Was that your hand up?
Yes, thank you very much. I was struggling a bit with my hand up. Sorry, Linda, thank you very much. As ever, that's really helpful. I'm glad you've had the opportunity to take us through that. I'd like to go back a little bit to the parent steering group and the comment made within the paper about other establishments actually having already submitted reports. So to just get some feedback, please, in terms of the parent steering group response to this, to ask the question also, did the parent steering group have sight of this response? And also, is there the opportunity for us to see what the parent steering group's response is that has been submitted? And can you give us some stats, please, on the number of schools, either in numbers or as a percentage of our estate in terms of that have actually submitted responses to this? And clearly we've got our education representatives here, so I'm particularly interested to get a response from them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. So through you, Leader. Ultimately, Councillor Mackay, it's a public consultation, and staff as individuals can respond, schools as individuals could respond, a maths department could respond, members of the public can respond. It's out in citizen space, so we're not able, I can ask the schools who has and who has not. In respect of the Parent Council Steering Group, I am only there to provide advice and support, Councillor Mackay. If the Parent Steering Group wish to submit a response, they'll be doing so through potentially their own parent councils. So again, this has to be an empowerment type model in terms of going through this again of their own free will in their schools. The schools making responses, as I say, this has gone out to all staff in East Ayrshire Education for 3 weeks now. So yes, I can certainly ask the schools who has submitted and get you those statistics. That's not a problem. In regards to the Parent Council response, John Semple, who is the new chair of the Parent Council Steering Group, is also the vice chair of the National Parent Forum for Scotland, and it's the National Parent Forum for Scotland who are also preparing a response, Councillor Mackay. There's not going to be one submitted by East Ayrshire Parent Council Steering Group, because actually to do so is actually up to them in that particular space. I would only advise them on that by keeping them, as Councillor Cowan has mentioned, keeping them up to date in the education reform space so that they feel enabled to make the response. If I am honest, when we discussed the consultation last night and John introduced that, so again, just to reframe, this is John as chair taking this matter through the steering group, not myself, because they're independent of the council per se. So ultimately, John is very concerned at the linguistics in the survey, being non-parent and if you're not in the teaching profession, particularly very friendly in terms of how they're set out, and the MPFS are representing themselves in this space. So the response to the proposals, when discussed, generally very sound. They see there's a sensibility in all of this in terms of particularly a new SQA that's more user-friendly and responsive. All the bits I've already covered, Councillor Mackay. But given that this is a free and open survey, as I say, I'm happy to ask the schools who has done a school response, but again, in an empowerment model, that's very much in their gift, and actually could be done in a huge amount of subsets and indeed by individuals. So I'm happy to do what I can to support any request, as always, Councillor Mackay, but again, it might be quite difficult to do so, but as I say, happy to do that. So thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Mackay.
Right, so I mean, they're obviously open to circulate to the cabinet, and if that's the case, I'll circulate any feedback I get directly to all the members of the cabinet. Okay, you happy with that, Maureen?
Sorry, thank you ever so much. It was just to pick up, clearly we're at the 6th of December today, so there would have been a meeting of the Parent Steering Group last night who had the opportunity to discuss this, as pointed out at paragraph 10. So I'm just asking Councillor Cowan, I'm not sure from your response if you had been present at the group or not, but I'm just asking somebody who was there to give me some sense of what was the response. And Linda, thank you very much. And I would support completely. Parent Steering Group has to be an empowered group, have to make their response. What I'm seeking to get from somewhere, and I hope I've got somebody in the room that can do that, is to give me some feedback from a meeting that would have happened last night. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. I don't know if there's some problem with the mics or something like that, but I thought Linda had already made that observation, but just for helpfulness, if you want to that, Linda.
Through you, Leader, and apologies, Councillor Cowan. So the parents are in absolute broad agreement with the principles and the purpose there. They're certainly in really broad agreement around about the need to modernise qualifications. I mean, some of the stuff we spoke about last night was actually pretty revolutionary in terms of the context and where we are. And, you know, clearly Councillor Cowan was present at the meeting and input to that meeting as well, very much in terms of educational reform and indeed where we might be going with all of this. So the piece the parents were not so happy about, Councillor Cowan, was the language used in the survey. They felt it was not particularly user-friendly for parents to access, and John Semple is feeding that back. So the MPFS have a seat at the Scottish Education Council alongside Connect, which are the two main bodies to represent parents in Scotland. So ultimately they have a seat at those tables in regards to being able to feed back at that particular level. And indeed that will also come through the consultation that I believe NPFS, so their response will also go through in that manner. But as I say, what we wanted to do was really ask the parents to get involved in the consultation, and I think that was the main objective that was achieved last night. But certainly we did take some views through that some of the language wasn't particularly accessible to parents with a non-education background. I hope that's helpful, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you.
Thanks on that. And I mean, if just for the sake of clarity, if you want to make it known to John, if they're very collective views and they want to circulate that to Cabinet, would be very interested in that, just to find out what their views are. As always, Ali, I don't know if you want to add anything.
To be honest, I'm not sure what value I can add to that, because I would really just be repeating what Linda has explained. Perhaps Councillor Mackay didn't hear in my opening remarks, I actually was thanking Linda for our time last night. We were at the event with the Parent Council, and as Linda's explained, the chair of that group was encouraging all the parent chairs to get involved and also to share that information within their own networks. And as previously explained by Linda, it is an empowerment model, it's a public consultation. So it really was just raising awareness of that and encouraging people to get involved and have their voices heard, because it is a democratic process.
Okay, thanks very much, Lynn. Okay, anyone else? As I said, if we get any kind of feedback, we'll pass that round if we think it's of any value to members. Okay, and we'll look forward to the consultation responses. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree the recommendations? Okay, thanks. And that concludes the items. I'll just give the education spokesperson time to come off screen. Thanks. And just on the previous item, Eddie's just reminded me that the public responses will be on the Scottish Government's website, so that's there for everyone to see. Okay, we go on to item 4 now, and that's the place-based investment programme, and Claire Kavanagh will present this paper. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This is the 7th place-based investment report to arrive in Chamber since the programme began, and today's paper sets out to do a number of things: to provide a further progress update on projects funded in the second year, to provide a mid-year progress update on year 3 projects, and to seek approval for the approach by which year 4 will be strategically managed. Paragraphs 3 to 7 set out the background with which members will be familiar, and that place-based investment is a capital Scottish Government fund requiring successful groups to put contracts in place for works by the March of the financial year in which their funds are allocated. And locally, Cabinet, recognising the positive impact that this community-led regeneration work has had, has agreed to supplement the fund with additional investment via the Shared Prosperity Fund and historical developer contributions. Paragraph 8 summarises year 2 progress further to the year-end position previously reported. I'd highlight for members the significant increase in spend, now over 50% of the allocation, and the further 6 projects which have been complete in the period, with full details of all year 2 projects set out in Appendix 1. Paragraph 10 continues to update members and work to support groups that in year 2 were not recommended for investment, and sets out a number of examples where groups have successfully secured investment outside place-based investment. In terms of year 3, at paragraph 11, the mid-year position, as is required by the national criteria, has been submitted to Scottish Government, detailing that of the 23 projects funded in that year, 18 have already successfully put contracts in place well in advance of the March deadline, and that all will achieve this milestone. Significantly, members, 2 projects are in fact already complete, and these are highlighted within the report with full information set out in Appendix 2. Moving through to paragraphs 17 onwards, the confirmed allocation for year 4 is £792,000, supplemented this year by £500,000 shared prosperity funding as agreed by Cabinet last August for projects able to ensure full
Sorry, Claire,
spend.
just sorry to interrupt. Can I remind members just to keep their microphones off? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Leader. For projects that are able to ensure a full spend of monies by 31st of March 2025, and these will be identified through the established processes, and we will also continue to use the historical developer contribution balances to match fund appropriate localities. The paper describes the ongoing learning which has informed our approach to continuous improvement in the programme, and highlight particularly at paragraph 20 that the combination of targeting funds at investment-ready projects using the share the love principle with applicants as agreed last year, and bringing recommendations to Cabinet in advance of the summer recess has proved effective in terms of improving the programme delivery, and that's evidenced by the fact that 78% of the projects for year 3 have had contracts in place well in advance of the deadline. In terms of continuing to improve, as set out at paragraph 21, in addition to the approach and all approaches previously used, year 4 will also feature 2 Love Local conference style events to showcase successful projects, to enable a sharing of learning between groups, and to provide information to those prospective applicants about wider funding opportunities. We'll also be building on the inclusion of community voice established last year, and this year that will be by means of open recruitment for community representatives, and that will continue to focus on lived experience of managing regeneration projects. Further applicant projects will be expected to demonstrate consideration of future demography of their town or village, and linked to this, the overall financial sustainability of their project. This approach, members, recognises that next year, year 4, will be the penultimate year of the programme, and it's recommended on the basis that it provides a foundation for local community-led regeneration to transition to other sources of funding before place-based investment concludes. The implications are summarised at paragraph 26, and they're set out between paragraphs 27 and 36. The recommendations are at paragraph 2. Happy to stop there for any questions or comments.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Claire. Members, any questions? I mean, I've got to say it's another excellent report. So many of our communities right across the board, urban, rural, getting touched, and so many new organisations, incredibly, been added to the list. But and it's, how many years is that? You said 5 or 6. How many years have we been doing this now?
4. This next year will be year 4 out of 5.
So it's good that we're still able to contact some new organisations, not just the same ones getting it all the time. That was a previous criticism. So great to see all that work and going out to our communities there. It's a great bit of work. Members, any comments? Is it Maureen?
Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you for the report. Not only thank you for the report, but thank you for the ongoing way in which you have conducted this process and undertaken this work. And the very sincere way in which you have developed that process of learning for improvement, and the conversations that we have had, the comments that have come back from community, that have come back from members, we can clearly see, and that's clearly presented to us. So again, I think it's positive. It's never easy to find timing for when is the best time to actually alert communities to changes that are happening and opportunities for them. I think you're doing as much as you possibly can. I'm hoping very sincerely that the weather is good and kind to you in terms of the proposed dates for your conferences, and very much welcome the fact that you have chosen to have your first event actually based in Dilmellington itself, and I'm sure that'll be very much appreciated by the communities and the groups there. Thanks very much, and happy to accept recommendations.
Thanks, Maureen. I'm just looking at some of the awards here, and it's maybe remiss of myself just now to declare a non-pecuniary or interest. I've got a minor interest in terms of the Howard Centre. I'm a member of the St Andrews St Margaret's Church, which helps. And I suppose I'm also connected with the centre stage. I'm on the council appointment to their can't remember what kind of group it is. It's kind of centre stage. It's not the board itself. It's the council's consultation group that I think myself and Barry are on it, from memory. I'm just to declare that.
I think it's been wound up though, Chair.
Has it?
I think so.
Well, hopefully, I'll declare it just in case it isn't, Barry. But if you,
I'll join you then, Chair. Thanks.
If it's no, you're right. That's why I know you. Okay, thanks, Barry. I'll just check that. Graham, and then I'll get Graham and then Drew.
Thanks, Drew. It's just a quick question. What support, if any, we're providing to our community groups, especially through these difficult financial conditions? Most projects will be feeling the impacts of inflation, rising material costs, and higher anticipated tenders. Are we helping share best practice between these groups, and are we sharing what we've learned as a council with them to try and get these projects over the line? Thanks.
Claire?
Thanks. Through you, Chair. Absolutely, Councillor Barton. So we've got a really supportive approach to both promoting the investment opportunity on an annual basis, but also through our project monitoring activity. That's where we take the opportunity to, share best practice as we're finding it through those ongoing visits. And definitely it's foremost in our mind about what these conference style events should be about, showcasing projects that have been successful, but definitely more broadly than that, the experience of doing them, so that applicants, prospective groups have got that real sense of what it takes. It's also part of why we have that community panel focused on lived experience of doing these types of works, because we recognise all of those challenges. And again, within the programme, we also, in approving the projects, maintain a contingency balance, so that we can move the balance of monies within the programme between projects when they come across, changes of circumstance. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Anyone else? Drew first, sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sorry, my apologies, my camera's not working, but I would just like to thank Claire and the team for all the hard work they're doing there, and all the updates I receive on quite a regular basis. Last year, the place-based fund was very successful, with myself receiving great feedback from the communities on the process, especially involvement of the new communities judging panel, giving communities a say. This year we can oversubscribed again, but I'm sure with the help of officers and the community judging panel, that another successful round of funding will go out to the community. So well done to Claire and the team again. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Just I think we'd echo that, and your own involvement, Drew, in that as well. Jim.
Thanks again, Claire, for the paper and great work again. Just in terms of paragraph 5, as far as the recruitment panel goes, are you looking for completely new members or an existing member still sit on that panel?
I don't think we've got fully formed thoughts around who we would want to see in that panel. I suppose we would reflect how much the people who were involved in it last year really enjoyed it, found it a valuable experience. So if they wanted to come back, that would only add, positive experience to the process. But equally, we're open to broadening that out to people who haven't had any involvement. It's, again, as I say, it's about people who have got that lived experience of doing the projects that we will do, work alongside, because they found it so beneficial. I think they're truthfully potentially thought it was something of a tick box exercise last year, and then when they got into that room and on that day discovered that it was absolutely meaningful in arriving at the recommendations that then come to members.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a wee question around about the demography. You said that the going forward groups will be asked essentially to show that they are feasible. What supports do we have in place for our community groups so that they can get that information? Because I would imagine that would be quite difficult for individual groups to get if they didn't have kind of support from ourselves.
Thanks. Through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working alongside corporate services to use a sort of ward by ward map of the current census data. We'll also be looking to update and issue that with the new data on a ward basis when it's received. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that that's accessible, understandable, something visual that a community group can understand. Okay, these are the trends that we're going to see in terms of our population for our town and village, and we'll put that in place as part of a sort of toolkit and pack of information for prospective applicants before the period opens. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Neil. Drew, is that your hand back up? Was that a legacy hand?
Legacy, Dooley.
Right. Thanks, Drew. Okay. Great to see some of these grants, to see the QLOC started already. I noticed they did a bit of work, hopefully, for the Chinese New Year, and I think we're going to see the well. Some of us are going to see the well later in the week. Okay. Great to see the work there. Thanks, Claire and the team. Well done. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Okay, that's fine. And now we go to Housing Land Audit and Alison. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The purpose of this report is to present the Housing Land Audit 2022 to Cabinet. All planning authorities are required to prepare a housing land audit annually. And for the last few years, we've brought you a paper on the audit which highlights its findings and seeks authority to publish it online. And the recommendations are set out in paragraph 2. The housing land audit process essentially involves monitoring house build rates, including the take-up of housing sites that are allocated within the local development plan, and is therefore a useful way to monitor if and how quickly our housing sites are being developed out. The audit undertaken and presented is for April 2022 to March 2023 and monitors development over that period. The audit has been prepared essentially at the tail end of our current adopted local development plan, and LDP2 will, all being well, be adopted early in 2024, and therefore future housing land audits will start to take on board the release of new sites within that plan. So I'll not go through every part of the report, but just some of the most important parts. Figure 1 at paragraph 7 shows the projected programming of housing development over a 5-year period. These projections have been arrived at through engagement with a number of stakeholders, including house builders themselves, Homes for Scotland and our housing colleagues. Figure 1 anticipates relatively consistent house building within East Ayrshire as a whole, which is likely to peak in 24-25. As can be seen in the table, house building is more limited in the Doon Valley, and this has long been the case. But it should be noted that the audit process omits developments of 3 houses or less, which do come forwards in the Doon Valley. There's a full breakdown of the audit on the members portal, which breaks it down into wards and settlements. So moving on, a key purpose of the audit is to monitor whether the 5-year housing land requirement is likely to be met. This requirement is the number of homes that should be delivered over the local development plan period. As the report explains, at paragraphs 11 to 12, there are various ways to calculate this, but figure 2 uses the method that has generally been agreed by the courts. And it sets out that the requirement is unlikely to be met across East Ayrshire. The shortfall, as per paragraph 13, can be largely explained by the pandemic, construction inflation and the cost of living crisis, which have all had a major impact on development across East Ayrshire and indeed much of the country. Recent dialogue with Homes for Scotland is that this constrained development is likely to continue, certainly in the short term, but that things are anticipated to pick up towards the mid-end 24 and 25. Important to point out, as per paragraph 14, the shortfall is not really about the lack of supply. There remains capacity within sites, even at this late stage of the LDP lifespan. Paragraphs 16 to 18 highlight the clear links between the audit process and the LDP2 preparation process. And a new housing land requirement has been established for LDP2, which is ambitious. The audit process also allows a real examination of whether sites remain effective. That means with development will come forward, and the process of preparing LDP2 has resulted in several sites being deallocated, as they have shown through multiple audits that there's a lack of developer interest. The outcome of the LDP examination is expected in the next couple of weeks, so we should be in a position to know soon what the final sites in LDP2 will look like. There are not particularly any implications that I want to pull out, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for that. Anyone else? Any comments? I think it's quite straightforward. Can we agree with recommendations? Okay, thanks. And just a reminder, the item 5 that was previously lodged has been withdrawn in terms of the Coalfield Communities Landscape Partnership. And we proceed to the next item, which is the permission to enter into negotiated contract with SEIDA, and I hope that's the right way to say it, Limited for system support. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. This report's brought to Cabinet just in line with the scheme of delegation and to formalise the procurement requirements. Purpose of the report is to seek permission to create a 5-year contract, negotiated contract with a company. I'm going to pronounce them ASADA, to develop the people manager system within facilities and property management. The background just sort of sets out the history of the system. Our service has utilised the system since 2002. It was an internal development approach that we took through a company, Conshare, at the time, and that system has effectively operated and managed a whole range of information to support the day-to-day management of the service. And paragraph 6 and 7 just sets out that kind of detail of what the system produces and how it supports the service. Since about 2010-11, system was transferred to a web-based system, and the original company was bought out, which has meant that the developers who were involved in the original system have transferred to this new company. They have provided support on an ad hoc basis over the years, but what we're keen to do is effectively just establish a more formal arrangement going forward over the next 5 years, just to kind of protect ourselves, and also with the wider changes in terms of the payroll system and the digital strategy. Clearly, there's sort of risks around the management of that information. So hopefully fairly straightforward proposals, members, and would ask just to agree the recommendation, and happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, can we agree recommendations? Okay, thanks. And now come to East Ayrshire Cycling Initiative. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Members,
This report seeks approval of Cabinet to permit the Head of Roads to enter into a partnership arrangement with a sole supplier, Love to Ride UK, for the provision of a council-wide cycling initiative. This initiative has been implemented as a temporary measure to replace the hub at Kilmarnock Station due to its closure as a result of Sustrans withdrawing support. Love to Ride UK have been active within the UK since 2007, and it provides an off-the-shelf programme which has been developed over 15 years. It entails the development of a web platform and app available to individuals, communities and workplaces with a clear focus on encouraging and supporting new and existing cyclists. The proposal to engage Love to Ride UK has been presented to the external funders, Paths for All, and they have confirmed their support. The recommendations are contained in paragraph 2. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Kevin. Any comments? Good to see that some of the activities at Active Travel Hub are being maintained. Do a really good bit of work there. Goes along with some of what we're trying to do with healthy lifestyles. Good. If there's no comments, can we agree with the recommendations? Okay, and what's got the South Ayrshire Cycling Initiative? Thank you, Chair. This report seeks the approval of Cabinet to allow the Head of Roads to enter into a partnership arrangement with a sole supplier, Intelligent Health Limited, for the provision of a South Ayrshire Council-wide cycle initiative. This initiative has been implemented as a temporary measure to replace the hub at Ayr Station due to Sustrans withdrawal of funding. This initiative is for the provision of a cycling scheme which will boost and enhance low-carbon transport and active travel programmes by providing an exciting and engaging platform for the communities of South Ayrshire through a new partnership arrangement with Intelligent Health Limited, Beat the Street. The proposals to engage Intelligent Health Limited has been presented to the external funders, Paths for All, and they have confirmed their support. Paragraph 2 details the recommendations. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Kevin. I'll not ask you if that's better than the East Ayrshire one, but given your forthcoming role. Members, any comments or questions? Claire?
Just to reiterate what you said, it's good to see that Sustrans, disappointed that they went, but it's good to see that we're going to continue, especially with the healthy aspects and wellbeing. Thank you.
It's Claire. Okay, can we agree recommendations? Okay, thank you. And that concludes Cabinet for today, and thank you all for your attendance.